Welcome, welcome. This is the education session that happens with the Eco Builders every month. And we want to start off, as you're all getting settled down, we want to start off with a little video about one of the key initiatives that the Eco Builders have started. And so let me introduce Chris Van Dalen, and he'll take you through the Code Innovations video. Chris?
Just go ahead and play it, right?
Profiles on innovative green codes, incentives, and cutting-edge initiatives, and educate and advocate for policy innovation to expand our impact. Join our Founders Circle of visionary leaders in helping to expand the Code Innovations database. Stand beside these other champions of innovation and help make all of this possible.
I see, not very far out from here, this project achieving a lot. It's only years out that we might see a lot of change.
We need your help to make the Code Innovations database possible. Please assist us with any donation, and if you're willing to be a champion, that's even better. Everyone's support is needed to help us empower innovators by expanding this valuable tool. You can also contribute what you know by visiting our website.
All right, welcome everybody. Wow, what a crowd. And there's probably 150 people in this room right now, which is probably it's probably a record for the Eco Building Guild monthly meetings. And also we have at least 5 other satellite locations. So hello to all of you out there in the world, in Olympia and Vermont and in Colorado and Woodinville, all over the place. People are tuning into our simulcast. So thanks for everyone for for signing up and getting involved. My name is Chris Van Dalen, and I operate the Code Innovations database for the Northwest Eco Building Guild, which we just talked about. That video you just saw was a crowdfunding video for a campaign that we launched in December, and was really successful. So if you could, I got the slide clicker here. Yes. So I just want to talk a little bit about the database before we start off with the session tonight, and give you an idea about a new fundraising campaign we're getting ready to start and get your feedback about it. So the database itself is an online resource where we document the successes and lessons learned of eco-building innovators who really, in a lot of ways, represent the R&D department, a virtual R&D department, to be sure, but a real force for pushing the envelope with new designs, materials, and technology that make it easier for all the rest of us to build green. They invest their time and money and they make it happen. The rest of us have the opportunity to follow in their footsteps, but a lot of times they face these regulatory burdens, these or barriers, code barriers that can stop or stall the best ideas from getting adopted more broadly. So we're trying to document those in case studies that we place on the website, and which provide a kind of a roadmap to navigating the permitting process for people who want to follow successful innovators. So to that end, we launched a crowdfunding campaign to fund our 3-year campaign starting this year, to expand the database and put this valuable information put it into the hands of every code official in the Pacific Northwest and builders nationwide. And so we've just in December we started a crowdfunding campaign. We got 106 people to donate, an average of like $225 each, and we raised $25,000 in about 6 weeks. It was an amazing success, and I thank everyone in the room who contributed to that, and and many others who probably will soon. So that was a successful program, but we still have more to go to raise more money because we have a $250,000 budget for this year. And so we're going to start a new campaign probably March 15th through May 31st called Beacons of Innovation, and we're seeking a bunch of folks who want to help us raise that money. You've already got it there. Okay, so we're looking for 20 or so champions who will sign up and become fundraisers with us. And help us by underwriting one of these beacons. And each beacon is like a proposed case study that we don't have the funding to do yet. It's a particular thing for tiny homes or for tall buildings or any kind of number of different things. But we're looking for people who will take the charge and lead that effort to get other people to donate. So that we can self-fund this program, lift it up, and then we're going to leverage the resources that we do receive from our community to go after grants that we're applying for in the next couple of weeks. So the fundraisers, the champions, if you will donate at least $150 and then get a bunch of other folks to contribute to raise the $1,500 to fund each particular case study. And we're looking for both individual donors as well as business underwriters. So what I wanted to do right now real quick is to give you an idea of what that campaign is going to look like, and I'm asking for some feedback from the community about how this sits with you and whether you would contribute to it, whether businesses would get involved. So we're looking for individuals who can do any size of donation. They can do recurring donations, and we're looking but those champions who become fundraisers would give $150 or more, and by doing so they'd get their name on one of the case studies and get public recognition at one of these events, also be recognized on social media and our blog posts. Business underwriters, the price would be a little higher at $750. For that, they would get a free basic professional membership, a linked company name on the case study, and social media and blog posts as well. And then every year we're going to do an annual publication that would have some ad space for those companies and their logos and such. We're going to do a multi-pack offer as well. If they want to just really help us out, they could do that for 5 case studies at one time, and there would be also a free education committee sponsorship, like the folks we have in the back here today. So anyway, that's the basic idea for our Beacons of Underwriting, Underwrite a Beacon of Innovation campaign, and I'm just looking for people to come up to me afterward and give me some feedback on whether this would be something that could get you fired up and make you want to donate and contribute to our cause. So that's all I have for that, and I want to turn it back over to Pat, who's going to open up the session tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. That's a really important initiative for us because as you'll see tonight, we are going to be presenting some really cutting-edge housing concepts, and they're pushing against. They're pushing against codes and regulations in order to get this done. So, really important initiative that we have, and I'm hoping that it continues on, and we try to push the envelope and get the regulators to take a look at what we have. I want to point out a couple of our sponsors here. First off, I'm glad to say that we now have simulcast, and so we are broadcasting in as far as Vermont, Colorado, Utah, down in Olympia, Indigo Farms, thanks the Olympia chapter, and over at 21 Acres in Woodinville, thanks 21 Acres for hosting. And we have 3 sponsors that are sitting at the back of the room. The first one is Mighty House. This is about a heating system, big heat with small footprint. We also have Energy Technologies back there. Al is an expert in ductless heat pumps, and he can help you with all of the discounts and the rebates that are happening in the city, and even getting you free audits. So go ahead and talk to Al back there. And then, excuse me, we have Deco with lighting. Deco makes beautiful connected light switches that allow you to control any light in your home from any light switch or your phone at 1/5 the cost of comparable systems. So take a look at Deco Systems. We're really grateful that they are here, they sponsor us, they help us with food and keep our volunteers happy. The other thing is we have a lot of committees, and these committees are really gung-ho enthusiasts, and they're either in this case tiny houses and other committees like the Education Committee, and we come up with all kinds of ideas of what our audience wants to hear, and we dig into it. We do all of the research, try to find the right speakers, and bring it to a session like this. Janie, did you want to announce the committees? So Janie's going to come up here in just a second and announce some of the committees that we're forming right now.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming tonight. So a couple fun options for you. If you want to volunteer at the end of April and early March, we have the Northwest Green Home Tour coming up, which is a really fun, exciting event where people offer up their houses that are greenhouses, and then we get to tour them and see what's going on in different areas of our city. And we need around 80 volunteers for that, so more the merrier. And there's a sign-up sheet over here at the table. And then also we are starting a tiny house subcommittee, which is under the Education Committee. So if you're interested in that, after tonight you want to learn more, or if you want to offer some options for our next year committees and events, that would also be great, also over there on the table. And then thirdly, we also have a new committee that we're forming for young professionals. So these are people under 40 or people who are starting a career in the design realm, either changing careers or starting off. And we will welcome anybody who wants to get involved and join us for that. And we have some happy hours coming up later on in the spring. So if you would like to sign up for that as well, it's at the table. Great. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thanks, Janie. So you can see we have quite a few things going on. I also wanted to mention that next month we have the caulks and sealants session, and we've got some experts in there that know how to seal up a house. So make sure you take a look at the website and sign up for that as well. I also wanted to point out to the people that not only sponsor us, but the people that come to our sessions and donate to us and keep the action going and keep some of these sessions going as active as we have been. Because all of our memberships are all what we need to keep us moving forward and keeping our volunteers happy. So, without further ado, let me introduce Chris. And Chris is going to take you through the speaking portion of this session. Chris?
All right. Now for the actual show. All right, so as we heard in last month's education session, Seattle and the Pacific Northwest have a huge housing affordability problem. And since there is no silver bullet, we are called to find creative solutions, and so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We have Dee Williams, who built her own tiny house with her own hands from scratch. She didn't have any sort of building background, and I feel like that kind of will speak to a lot of people in the crowd tonight. And we have Florian, who built an earthship with the community out of, items that have been discarded. So car tires, glass bottles. It's a great way to use these things that we have a lot of. And then we have Chris, who's going to come talk to us. Chris is going to come speak again and talk to us about kind of the codes and regulations, because tiny homes aren't exactly kosher yet in Seattle, and so we need to make some changes. So, without taking up any more of your time. Oh, actually, so there are a lot of people here, and usually we have kind of a town hall type of just raise your hand and ask questions. And so this might be it would take up a lot of time. So what we're going to do is have these index cards go around and take as many as you need, write down your questions, and then at the end of each presentation, we're going to have all the cards go to the middle, and we'll have somebody collect them, and then we'll collect the cards and try to get as many questions answered as possible. So try to keep your questions down to a minimum, and we will have a large question and answer session at the very end. And yeah, let's see, let's get all of that. Oh, so we hope tonight we'll plant a seed or help you get more nutrients to the idea you've already been cultivating. The Guild is made of change makers, so we want to spark conversations and action. We want to hear the results and share those stories. So as you listen and discuss tonight, think about what sparks your interest, what connections can be made, and what actions can impact the number and quality of affordable small footprint spaces in our community. Now we have Dee Williams.
Hi, everybody. This is getting close to being past my bedtime as an old lady. So anybody else in my camp? Okay, sorry. Thank you for taking your time to come out tonight, though. I really find this completely inspiring to find so many people out on a school night. So thank you. The thing I wanted to offer is a little bit of my personal story, because I've over the last 12 plus years that I've been living in a tiny house, I've found my story repeated back to me by so many other amazing people. And there are some builders here. How many people in the room have built either a tiny house on wheels or a tiny house that is somehow in use as a residence, likely illegally? So anyway, so I'm just going to offer a little bit of my story, and then talk about how that story, I've seen it develop over the years through my company, PAD. Hi, Chris. So here we go. Nope. You there? which one do I poke? Oh, that one is so clever. Do I go this? Where? Where do I poke it? Point it. Okay, so just as far as my story goes, this is my house in Portland, Oregon. I bought it in 1997. It was the crappiest house on the block, and I spent the next 6 years slowly restoring it. And I know I'm not alone in this because I know the Seattle market is replete with fixer-uppers, and it was the only house I could afford. So I ended up, kind of shifting from being the gal that would go out backpacking, kayaking, hiking over the weekend to being the gal that was going to rent like, an 18-inch pad sander to sand out my floors. And I learned a lot. And actually, it was really cool because I love power tools. So it was a really fun process. After about 6 years, I ended up in the hospital. I was ultimately diagnosed after a little bit of time with congestive heart failure. And I found myself really questioning what I was supposed to do about that. I was 40 years old at the time, and I had no idea how my future was going to hinge. I just knew that I didn't want to have to live with my mortgage and huge utility bills anymore, and I wanted to be free to travel and see my friends, see my families, and get my life back a little bit. So I read an article about a guy who had built a tiny house on wheels, and that to me, it was just this really cute little cabin on wheels, and I thought, this could work for me. I could find a place to park it, maybe I could maintain my job for a little bit longer, keep my health benefit, maybe work part-time, and kind of live free a little bit. So I started designing. I ended up with a house that would be able to travel down the highway without getting a special use permit of any sort. So it's 13 and a half feet tall. I built it on a 14-foot trailer. It's got 84 square feet downstairs. That includes a bathroom and a little kitchenette and a place to Bollywood dance, because who doesn't like that? And it's 8.5 feet wide, eave to eave at the widest. So I started building on my own. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. And that's something I've really seen in the tiny house movement, whether it's on wheels or ground-bound, is that it's people that want to do it themselves. And I think the philosophy is, how bad could it be? It's so small, Maybe it's not that big an idea after all. So I started building, and I did find, is this, oh, what did I do? What did I do? Save me. To you who are not in the room, I'm sorry. I won't hit any more buttons, I promise. There we go. So 3 months and $10,000 later, I ended up with something that was pretty close to the vision that I had. It had included a lot of green building materials, for example, marmoleum on the floor. I ended up with cotton bat insulation. A lot of the materials are salvaged. Like I got the front door out of a dumpster. A lot of the cedar was 400-year-old old growth that somebody had originally milled in the 40s and had tucked in his attic of his garage, and I bartered out to get that from him. So it really took shape based on the materials that I could find. And this was my house. This is like the basic structure. Systems were pretty basic. I have a propane stove, one burner, cooktop, a propane heater, absolutely no running water. So I jug water in to the kitchen. I have a composting toilet. I have a smidgen of electricity that's generated with a 240-watt solar electric system. Really basic stuff. And not at all like some of the other nicer tiny houses that have been built since, and there are people in the room that have built them. I'm looking at you, that are a lot fancier than mine. Mine was pretty rudimentary. And a part of that was because I wasn't sure where I was going to land. So about a month before I finished the project, I started kind of fishing around for friends who might be willing to have me live in their backyard. which is, it was really kind of cheeky. I'd, get invited over for dinner, and I'd, kind of slowly lean out the side door and check out the backyard. And ultimately, I was able to find a spot, and I'll show you what that looked like in just a second. The house has some parts that are challenging, namely, how am I going to get my dog up to the loft? I have a sleeping loft that's 4 feet high. That's where I have a double bed up there, and I sleep with my dog. So how am I going to get up there? And it's the experiment, right? You move in and you get to see whether or not your design, whether or not your vision holds true. And it wasn't perfect, but over time I kind of figured out what to do with my dog, and I figured out how to sleep very comfortably without ever banging my head into the ceiling. I've never actually banged my head into the ceiling. And actually the sleeping loft has ended up being one of my favorite spots. In part, I think because I'm elevated off the ground, but I've got a giant 4-foot skylight on one side and a loft window right behind my head. And it's like sleeping in a treehouse for me. And, from that vantage, I think it's worked a little magic on me. Kind of start to see the earth with a little more of a stretch. The horizon looks a little longer. My problems, like, congestive heart failure, start to feel a little smaller. And I feel a little more powerful, to be honest. I don't know what, it's some sort of psychology thing. One of the other challenges is trying to figure out how to entertain. The cool thing is that since, you have people over and the party always ends up being in the kitchen, which is essentially my whole house. The whole house is built around that concept. So over time, I've figured this out, and I've turned out to be a fabulous guest. So I asked my friends if I could come over and make them dinner at their house, and perhaps take a shower afterwards, and do the dishes. So my kitchen, my house isn't the spot that it used to be. I used to love hosting a good backyard barbecue, and I miss that, to be honest. I miss being a hostess, but I have tremendous newfound gratitude for my friends who are willing to roll with me having this different lifestyle over the last 12 and a half years. So that's the house. Those are the knickknacks of the house. And then there's the greater expanse, that horizon that has started to stretch for me and how I define home. When I lived in Portland in my bigger house, I was so focused on my renovation projects and racing off to work in order to pay the mortgage and pay the utility bills that I don't think I was as connected to my community as I've ended up being. So this is my house with, see if I hit the right button this time. This is my friends Hugh and Annie's house. They live there with their 2 kids. They invited me to live in the backyard. Next door was Hugh's Aunt Rita, who was 80 years old when I moved into the backyard. And then here's my house, kind of tucked in the corner of this kind of common back. This is the garage, just so you know. So it's not like the ideal place that I had in mind. I envisioned I would be in the woods somewhere, I would have a little more elbow room. And instead, I'm kind of pinched into the backyard. And it was a big experiment for all of us. Because all of a sudden, I have to walk up Hugh and Annie's driveway in order to get to my house. I have to cut across Rita's patio to get to my house. In the morning when I wake up, I go sit on the porch. Drink a cup of coffee with the morning light streaming in. I'm staring at the back of Rita's house. It's about 20 feet away from my house. It's not that vision that I think I always had of a certain kind of autonomy and just perfect beauty, but it's absolutely what I would choose now. It's turned out to be the perfect solution for what I want in my life. I've come to relate to nature differently because I'm living in a space that's smaller. And I've heard this resounded by a lot of people who have chosen to live in a smaller space. You start to use your outside environment in different ways. So as an example, I walk up on the porch and I positioned the house so that the weather kind of blows in and hits the back of the house, and I get a rain shadow on the porch, so I can peel my raincoat off and dry my dog off before I ever open the front door. And in the past, in my bigger house, you know, I had a mudroom. So I was able to actually walk into the house, take my muddy boots off, and do all of that stuff. So getting comfortable with what nature has to offer has been kind of a surprise. I've always been an outdoor girl, but all of a sudden, it's like I see nature differently. And I think part of that is because when it's pouring down rain, like it does 9 months out of the year, some years, I wake up with the rain banging on the roof. You know, I wake up with big windstorms. I wake up when the weather's perfect and I roll over on my side and I have this giant skylight that gives me this view of the moon. Like the moon the last couple of days, have you guys seen it? It hasn't been amazing? We live in the most beautiful place. And I think for me, because I'm so easily distracted, collapse into my iPhone and my computer, and I've got to do this, and I obligated to do that, and I should check on this, I forget that nature is like right there, just waiting for us to invite ourselves into it instead of being distracted from it. I'm connected to the people that live closest to me in a different way. So over time, as an example, Hugh's Aunt Rita, as she grew older, she grew needier. And so I became her honeydew, initially to go in and turn the fire alarm off regularly as she would burn toast or whatever else. I would fix the hot water heater. I would unclog all of her sinks, the toilet. I regrouted her bathroom. I became the person that would get her up in the morning. I gave her sponge baths. I watched her grow old, and it was my gift to watch her pass. And all of a sudden, I got a chance to see that our mortality isn't something to run away from. It's something to step into, which is something really good for a girl with congestive heart failure to step into. But Rita taught me that. I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't live in a tiny house, an 84-square-foot house, 20 feet from hers. It opened a door for me that I really needed at the time, and I still need. After Rita passed, another family moved in, and Oliver, who's 4 years old now, has become one of my best friends. This kid is crazy. I get out of, I'll come home from work, and he wants to take the lawn chairs apart. He's gotten really comfortable using an impact driver, which I've taught him to use. I've taught him how to mow the grass with me helping him out. Safety's job number 3, I get that. But that's been really cool, too, to see this evolution of relationship over time. And then I'm still learning what it means to live in community. So my relationship to the food co-op has become stronger because I shop every other day. My relationship to the laundromat has, well, I wouldn't say we're on best terms, but we've gotten to tolerate each other differently. My relationship to the library, to everybody in my neighborhood, we have this kind of like motto that you should be able to walk a warm bowl of soup to everybody on your street without it getting cold. And that's been cool. That's been a cool realization. It's going smaller has changed me, and I'm offering this story just to say I'm not unique. I've heard it from many other people who have chosen to live differently in community, to give up a little of their elbow room in order to obtain something much broader. So the question really becomes, for all of us, as we're kind of forward thinking and trying to figure out what we want to do next, where is your living room going to be? What is it comprised of? Who's in there with you? At PAD, one of the things that I've really appreciated is seeing this growth toward people revisioning what it means to live in co-housing, what it means to live in a smaller footprint, and inviting other people to live in a smaller footprint along with you in the same parcel. And we've gotten to teach a lot of workshops and offer kind of a connector to different people in our community in Portland. So we've been able to network with city code enforcement folks to talk about, what stops us from going small, with the mayor's office, with movers and shakers who are a lot smarter at this stuff than I am, with designers, developers, and planners who can noodle through what the problems are. And the result has been, we've started to see more and more smaller ground-bound houses that are absolutely stunning, dotting the urban infill, the urban landscape of Portland. And some are ground bound and some are on wheels. I'm more familiar with the wheeled side because that's what Pat has been focused on, is teaching people how to build tiny and build wisely on wheels, which is kind of a unique, kind of more clunky issue to deal with. We've seen them kind of rustic. We've seen tiny houses that are just absolutely beautiful, modern houses. This one, I love this one. This was built by our friends at Shelter Wise. It's got this upper terrace patio. So you climb up a ladder outside and lounge around on the patio that's the roof. It's so cool. And then we've seen them super small. This is a Varda. This is my retirement home. So it's 56 square feet. I built it like 2 years ago, and I'm hoping to be able to move into that hopefully this year. Abel Zimmerman in Olympia, Washington has built some amazing homes, and I encourage you to go to his website, Zal Vardos, if you can find that. There are people that are springing up communities all over the place. In Olympia, we have Quixote Village, which has been a really great low-income housing. These are ground-bound houses. They have a lodge that's connected to this. Boneyard Studios in Washington, D.C., the Caravan in Portland. If you want to try on a tiny house and see how tiny it is, you can watch Portlandia. They did an episode on tiny houses, which was hilarious. Or you could go stay at the Caravan. And the slide I want to close with is there are all of these different ways of looking, particularly at tiny houses on wheels. You know, when I look at my tiny house, right here, when I look at it, I see the house that has become a part of what I call home. That's all I see. When the city of Olympia looks at it, they see a travel trailer. And because it's a travel trailer, there are certain restrictions on how that space can be used and where it can go. And I think we'll talk more about that later. When I went into the DMV to get the plate the first time I moved my house, they saw it completely different. They saw a utility trailer, which is what I originally purchased, with an art sculpture bolted to it. Seriously, that's the trip permit. And then there's how everybody else in my community sees it, which is an awesome potential solution for more affordable, livable, walkable communities. And so, you know, that's the nut we have to crack together, is that there are all of these different ways of looking at the same thing. And we're not going to figure out a path through that without sitting down and talking to each other more. So that's all I got to say, and we'll have a chance for questions later, right?
Great, thank you. If you've got your index cards, if you wanted to kind of pass them to the middle, and if not, we have Florian. Oh, one more thing.
Sorry. I just wanted to offer, for those of you that are interested in it, we have a legal path for tiny homes. This is for residential ground-bound homes or tiny houses on wheels. This was prepared by Eli Spivak out of Portland, and I'm happy to offer it electronically, and then I brought a couple of paper copies, but I'll just leave this on the table over there, and business card if you guys are interested in that. Sorry, Florian.
Hi. Wow, that's the largest audience I've ever had. So my name is Florian. I am the founder of Earthship Seattle. And an Earthship basically is the ultimate green building. It provides for everything people need to survive, and it is really easy and cheap to build. So that's it, I'm done. Oh, how do I use this?
Don't hit the wrong button.
Right. Okay, I'm gonna try. Okay, so I'm from this country. That's where my accent is from, that's where my sense of humor is from. And I apologize, I do not have subtitles, so bear with me. I'm gonna talk Is it working? Yeah. I'm going to talk a little bit about community. I live personally in an intentional community with 8 people. And I was really excited that tonight we were going to talk about co-housing, which includes community, interpersonal relationships. But then apparently the schedule changed, so I'm going to adapt to it. So I believe community is a human need. And we have here a society with many people suffering from isolation, loneliness, depression, and lack of connections. So I think if we want sustainable communities in the future, we need to look at logistics, at methods of building, at finances, at permitting. That's really important. But equally important is community, interpersonal relationships, and how we deal with that. And right now, we're not really equipped with that. I don't know if you can read. Yeah. So, in case you can't, it says, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for shareholders. That's the world I do not want to live in, personally. So that's why I think we need to look at not just building, but also community. I'm going to very just briefly mention 2 of the most advanced communities in the world that have dealt with these issues. The first one is called Tamera. It's in Portugal. They have about 200 people. This is a picture of their water retention landscape. You can see on the left, before they started digging their basically a big pond where it used to be very dry, and now, am I hiding? Thank you. So it used to be very dry, and now it is very green. Wildlife has returned. They have a really living lake. And there is a movie by Ian McKenzie coming up about them in the near future. The other one is Damanhur in Italy. I really recommend that. I mean, if you're interested in that, just look them up online, because I'm a little bit off topic right now. They have close to 1,000 people. They are known for their really impressive underground temples that they have built by hand. So, part of our current society, individualistic, consumerist society, is we have a lot of waste products, a lot of trash. Is it still working? Okay. So trash is an issue. Okay. These are tires. How do I have the pointer? Yeah, okay. Okay. These are people. So it's a mountain of tires, basically. And we don't really have good uses for them. And they can burn, which is pretty nasty, and it's really hard to put out that kind of fire. This is not better. They won't burn, but it's polluting the water. Lots of trash, plastic bottles, glass bottles, all kinds of trash everywhere. So here Earthship Seattle, we are an all-volunteer group, and we're not okay. And we met this wonderful woman called Roxanne, who let us build a demonstration project in her driveway. So she does not have a driveway anymore. So I'm gonna just show you like some pictures of how we went around to build that small structure, and then I'm gonna show you some pictures of full-on earthships from Taos, New Mexico. That's where they were invented over the last 30, 40 years. So a different way to use trash. So here we went and collected tires from tire shop, and they're happy to give them to you because they have to pay to get rid of them. We had a lot of, yeah, it's working. We had a lot of people. We built community just by having all these volunteers come with us and work with us. We used basically sheets of plastic that were basically trash to use as a vapor barrier and laid out tires. Pounding tires with dirt, so they were getting free CrossFit while building a structure. And this building a structure with 3 materials. Each tire is filled with dirt and then packed with a sledgehammer. It takes about half an hour per tire. So it's a good workout. And then you end up with a 200 to 300 pound brick, really massive brick that can store heat. So lots of people were here every weekend to work on it. People having lunch on the tire wall that was getting higher every week. We ended up with about 10 layers of tires. We tried a lot of things. So we tried packing peanuts to insulate the floor, and we actually dropped the packing peanuts from the roof just for fun. But this guy liked it a lot. And then we laid really gently dirt on top of the packing peanuts to try not to disturb them. That was a challenge. And at first the floor was a little squishy, and after we just worked on it more and more, now it really settled down and it's really firm. Don't get distracted. The concrete in the back is a retaining wall, so made from broken concrete that people would have to pay a lot of money to dump somewhere. So instead, they were really happy to deliver it to us for free. So something about plastic bottles. This is something that you can start doing right now, tonight. Each of these plastic bottles is filled with plastic trash. Anything that is dry and does not have food on it. So something that will not rot, basically. And we are building a wall, laying these bottles, and instead of cement, instead of concrete, we're using cob or adobe, basically a mix of clay, sand, straw, basically natural cement. So it's really a nice natural material. And as the wall goes up, you have these bottles that take space, so you use less cement or less cob, and you get rid of all of that trash. So if you just start doing that with any plastic bottle you have, you're gonna use a lot less space in your trash can. And then you can bring them to us. And eventually, since plastic bottles are not that pretty, we cover them with more cob and we plaster over them until you can't see them anymore. Glass bottles, they look better. We cut them in half and we pair one colored glass bottle with a clear glass bottle. And from the inside, it looks like this. So when the light goes through, it's kind of like stained glass. This is a more recent picture. You can see the front face. We're still working on it. We're going to have probably a tour for anyone who wants to come check it out or work on it. You can do both. Probably in the next 2 weeks. So to get you a better idea of what earthships are in general, I'm going to show you some earthships from New Mexico. So that's like a typical earthship. Using solar electricity, capturing rainwater from the roof. This is just another earthship, a little older. This is a bathroom with like sculpted shower space using glass bottles. This is a kitchen with a greenhouse inside the house where you grow food that you grow with the grey water coming from your shower, basically. An earthship will use the same water 4 times. You take a shower in it, that grey water grows food for you, then that water, the leftover water is pumped to flush the toilet, so you don't even need composting toilet in this case. And then that black water afterwards goes outside to another planter and grows more plants outside. That's another greenhouse inside an earthship. This is a bigger earthship. It looks like an Amazon jungle inside. This is from a bedroom. That's not a bad view. Again, more glass bottles on the sunset. Now that's what I'd like to see happen, more like an eco-village using earthships or tiny houses for people's dwellings, and have 1 or 2 larger community buildings for people to hang out together and still have their privacy when they want it. In Taos, New Mexico, they have a few compounds of earthships that are grouped together, like this one as well. They have about a community of about 100 earthships in New Mexico, and that's one of the most flamboyant earthship that they have there. The one where you have the big, the Amazon jungle basically is this one. So that's about what I have. Thank you.
Pastor Carson, to the setting.
Okay. Wow, this is a really amazing room. Again, I'm Chris, and I work with the Northwest Eco Building Guild on a project called the Code Innovations Database. And as I mentioned before, we're using it to document successful permitting pathways for all kinds of green building and high performance building innovations. But one of the permitting challenges that you run into is with tiny homes or tiny home villages. And Dee talked about that a little bit, but I want to just take a few minutes to kind of lay out a couple of stories and kind of the challenges that come up and how those have been overcome successfully in some cases, but also to look at policy changes that might be needed or to help more of these types of tiny home villages or individual tiny homes to be constructed and habitated. So let's see, I'll go on to the next slide here if it works. Okay. As I mentioned before, green building innovators are really like an R&D department for tiny homes and villages, among other things. They come up with new designs, materials, and technologies, and again, they face regulatory burdens that can slow or stop these really great ideas from being done. And then, a lot of cases, their pioneering work to overcome those challenges result in new building codes or policies that are innovative in their own right, that address those barriers and in the end up incentivizing this type of innovation. So on the bottom there you see a couple pictures of Dee's house and Quixote Village in Olympia, as well as the Dignity Village in Portland. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge what these represent. My parents lived in a world where you could get a job and afford to buy a house and have the American dream. My generation, not so much. I do happen to own my own home, but it's less and less possible for more and more people to have that opportunity to own their own home and live in it for their life. And it's just completely unaffordable for a lot of us on the wages that are available in the marketplace, and in some cases when you fall on hard times it becomes even more difficult. So tiny homes have become more and more popular in part because of this economic situation, and especially for people who are unhoused, they have even bigger challenges. And so one of the solutions that people have, what's going on here? It's stuck in between. I just want to go on past this one. Great. One of the solutions that people have come up with, is to build a tiny home village. In Portland, this is a picture of Dignity Village, where it started off with a protest of homeless people who set up an illegal encampment, and for several weeks and months they had their encampment, and the police rounded them up, chased them off, and they set up somewhere else. I'm going to go on to the next slide because it helps me tell the story. If you can go on to the next slide there. So in December of 2000, they established their tent city, and again, they just kept getting moved around by the police. They would chase them off of one area, they would go set it up somewhere else. And then one part of that group went and set up an encampment at an industrial area called Sunderland Yard in northeast Portland. They managed to stay there for a couple of years, and eventually, 3 years later, in 2004, the Portland City Council adopted a resolution to sanction this area as a designated campground under the terms of the law that's there, ORS 446, which basically is for designated campgrounds. It allows for the municipality to designate certain areas as transitional housings for people who lack permanent shelter and cannot be placed in other low-income housing. And you know, in the homeless situation, there's a lot of folks who don't necessarily fit into different shelters or other housing options, and so this is a you know, an option. This is what they end up having to settle for, is the tent city, but that's really not that great of a deal. So what's oh, it actually looks okay up there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, go back. So similar story, this time in Olympia, Washington, where I'm from. Basically, there was a homeless tent encampment that was set up as a protest against city policies that had been adopted to ban camping in the city limits. And so they had this encampment. They were chased off by the police. Then they went to the city council and said, hey, we need a place to stay. We need a place to live. And the city adopted a zoning code amendment that basically allowed them to have a permanent or temporary encampment where they had to move every 90 days to a new location. And there were 3 churches in town that offered to host the tent encampment. It was called Camp Quixote, and they had all kinds of different tarps and tents and different configurations, but every 90 days they had to tear it all apart, move to a different location, set it up again, and again in 90 more days they would have to do that again. That's 3 months, or 4 months, 4 months. And then eventually they extended it to 180 days so they wouldn't have to move quite as often, and especially moving in the middle of winter is really difficult if you don't have a roof over your head. So they extended it to 180 days, but all along, from the very beginning, the residents said, we want some dignity here. We want permanent housing for our community, and we want to create our own community. They decided they wanted to create Quixote Village, and so they partnered with one of the churches, the Universalist Church. They created Panza, which is a partner organization, and Panza and Camp Quixote worked together to get the funding to design Quixote Village. So can you go to the next slide? I'm not sure why it's not working there. Next one. Oh, okay. Go to the next one then. I can't really tell because of the monitor is a little weird. Okay, so in order to get this Quixote Village built, it was an extensive and painful, lengthy public process. First of all, Thurston County said, we'll donate the site for you guys to have this village. Panza and Camp Quixote residents worked together. They got some architects from the green building community to volunteer to facilitate design charrettes. They had a couple of those. I got to attend one of those, and they came up with their vision for the community. Then the staff at the city developed a zoning amendment that would allow for this to occur. They had public hearings with the Planning Commission, and eventually the Planning Commission recommended that they approve this zoning code change. The City Council adopted that amendment, and then there was a legal appeal from neighboring property owners who said, this is going to reduce our property values. It's going to create all kinds of problems in our immediate vicinity. They actually wanted to build it in an industrial area, kind of like Dignity Village did. But even the industrial property owners said, the noise we create in our business is going to disturb these poor people who are living there. Of course, yeah, what an ironic thing that is. So they did a legal appeal. They had all these, they fought to try to kill the project. But eventually the Growth Hearings Board saw the better judgment there, and they rejected the appeal. There was a second round of hearings with the Planning Commission, and the City Council had to adopt another zoning amendment and a comprehensive plan amendment. So, all of this running around to create just the basic housing for their community, and there has to be a better way to get this done. And so, that's kind of what I want to talk about here. The last couple minutes is to look at some of the challenges, the policy challenges that face you if you want to build a tiny home community or even an individual tiny home. I can't see the side. So, yeah, no, not that one. The one before. Okay. Okay, so land use and zoning codes exclude this type of development. They're, basically you can only have one house on a single ownership in many cases. You've got maximum density for your zone. You can only have a certain number of houses per block. You also have minimum lot size and building areas. So a lot of places you have to build a house. Your primary residence has to be at least 600 square feet. That's just an example. It varies from different city to different city. But in a low density residential zone, there are these minimum building areas, building size. And again, no allowance for multiple houses on a single property. And in the case of Coyote Village and Dignity Village, they didn't have the ability to put a residential homes within an industrial zone. So these are some of the challenges that are facing on the zoning code. So there's zoning code and land use, and that's separate from the building codes. The next slide is about building code requirements. Is it up? Yes? Okay. Recently, up until just recently, the requirement was a minimum of the minimum size for a one room for a house had to have at least one room of 120 square feet and a 18 square foot bathroom at a minimum. And so 138 square feet was the minimum size for a house. Now, Dee, your house is what? 84. So that wouldn't have qualified. And she's just miserable. Yeah, she really hates that. Well, fortunately, the International Residential Code of 2015 has changed that rule. So now you can have a house that has to have a minimum size room of 70 square feet and an 18 square foot bathroom. So you can have up to 88, or the minimum size is 88 square feet. So that's a good change. It acknowledges this trend toward tiny houses, but Dee's house still wouldn't work, unfortunately. And her 56 square feet would be even worse. But that's moving in the right direction. Let's see what else we got here. So yeah, having now I'm not sure how the city of Olympia allows your tiny home on wheels to stay there on a permanent basis, but that's something that's generally not allowed. Even if it's an RV, you can usually it's considered camping, and you can only stay there for 30 days. You have to move your tiny house on wheels every 30 days. Obviously, Dee has come up with some solution to that, but we'll ask her later what that is. Again, the building code requires a bathroom with a sink, toilet, and a tub or shower, and that has to be at least 18 square feet. One thing that's not allowed is having a ladder to access your sleeping loft. You have to have actually stairs to get to your place where you sleep, if it's upstairs. And then there are minimum height requirements. So all of these requirements add up to not being able to build tiny houses. However, there are some solutions that are being proposed, one of which Dee already mentioned from Eli Spivak. He's proposed this legal pathway for tiny homes to be constructed, and it's got a number of proposals that would change the city of Portland's zoning and their building codes to allow for this to happen without having to have all kinds of variances. So now, if you think back to the Coyote Village example, they had to go through all of this process. Just for one project, they had to go all through this process and get all these variances and changes to the zoning code in order to build their village. If every community has to do that, it's going to be cost prohibitive. It's going to take way too long. And so if we want this type of housing to be available, we should change the laws and the codes in order to make it a more streamlined and straightforward process that can be repeatable rather than having to do it separately each and every time. Go to the next slide. One other aspect that I wanted to mention briefly that you all in Seattle are probably aware of is apartments, or these micro-housing or congregate housing, where you've got a number of really small apartments that are gathered together in one place, share a common kitchen, perhaps a common bathroom, and they're really small. It's been recognized that this type of housing, and tiny housing as well, is the least expensive, most affordable type of housing you can build. And so but then in 2014, after a big outcry from residents who were living near these micro-housing units, had all kinds of complaints or concerns, and in 2014, the City Council passed new rules that all but banned this type of micro-housing or congregate housing. Fortunately, they went to the city and said, hey, wait a second, we really need this type of housing. It's for affordability, for a lot of different reasons. And so in the HALA report, they did recommend that they revisit those policy decisions that were made. So hopefully there'll be some reconsideration of that, and we can get, group architects and builders in the Eco Building Guild that want to build this type of housing can get back to work and do it. There's one of the firms that is a member of the Eco Building Guild is Neiman Tabor Architects, and they have a great blog where they are constantly posting about this type of housing. So I would recommend people check out Neiman Tabor and read their blog, because they are always keeping people updated about this. What's the next? So this is a growing thing. Camp Quixote in Olympia, Dignity Village in Portland, it's taken off. Eugene, Oregon has what's called Opportunity Village. Lake County, California, they've created cornerstone villages. That one came out of the fact that there were hundreds of people displaced from a fire that happened in the valley, and all of those people got together and said they wanted to, they created a tiny house, a transitional housing for those folks to, in a tiny house village, to deal with the fact that they had been displaced from the fire. So it's a kind of an emergency housing situation. So again, I can't see my slide. Let's see. So yeah, there's dozens of more of these tiny home villages in the works in Wisconsin, Texas, all over the place. And so it's definitely taken off, and I think it's something that we really should keep pushing for, the kinds of code changes and all that are going to be required in order for this to be a new type of housing that is allowed and recognized by the codes. So all of you in this room can do something about that by letting your folks know and studying up on the different approaches that have been done. I just want to recommend one resource for this. It's called Tent City Urbanism. They've got a book out and a lot of good reporting on the zoning codes and building codes and how those things will work, how those codes need to be changed. So check that out, and that's all I have. So do you guys want to add anything about the code and legal stuff? I think you should do that. Thanks.
Thanks, Chris. Before we go to the Q&A session, I wanted to point out that these sign-up sheets for the Green Home Tour and the Young Professionals are going to be on this table. So if you're interested in either of those committees, go ahead and sign up right here. And who has the tiny house sign-up sheet? Okay. So Laura has it back there. And say, Laura, can you bring it up here? So the tiny house sign-up sheet will be back there, be over here as well. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
All right. So we have the first couple of questions for Dee. Yeah. Do they have to come up here to answer? No? Okay, you can stay where you're at. Are there any classes? Actually, if anybody can answer this one. Are there any classes through UW or any other educational facility that would be recommended for further tiny house or green building education?
Well, shamelessly, I'll offer that my company is having a workshop in May, and that's pretty tiny house on wheels centric. So we talk a lot about how do you design and build a tiny house to withstand like hurricane force winds, an earthquake, and like driven rain all at the same time, which is what you got if you're driving down the highway. And a whole bunch of other things. Building a tiny house is not like building a regular house. You got issues with moisture buildup. There are a lot of other issues. So that's one resource. Yes Tomorrow Design Build School in Vermont offers a lot of awesome classes in design and build. And I'm sure there are other local resources
Yeah.
North Seattle College has a green real estate certificate course.
Did you guys hear that? North Seattle College
Green real estate.
Green Real Estate Certificate.
All right. There's a solar panels question. What are the realities of solar for tiny houses in Western Washington? Any logistics, cost, how many panels are needed, if this person wants to put in appliances, fridges, like these types of things?
I just looked over at Melissa Tack, who's over up against the wall. Raise your hand, Melissa. So she and her husband have a tiny house that, how many watts do you have?
I know zero about that.
Okay, they have a really big solar electric system. I have comparatively like a thimble full of electricity. The only thing my system runs is a couple of lights, powers my cell phone and a laptop. And it's a 240 watt system. If you're going to run a you guys understand this. If you're going to run a refrigerator and plug a shoe warmer in, or a glue gun, or a blow dryer, anything that is going to heat something up or cool it down, your demand for electricity is going to go way up. So my recommendation is that you sit down with somebody and work through that energy formula. You can certainly drive as much as you want, but where's the fun in that? There's something really magical about eating by candlelight. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. This one is for Florian. How much are Earth ships to build, and how hard would it be to build in Washington?
Wow, so that's two questions actually. So in terms of cost,
Do you want to
so in terms of cost, it can vary a lot. Some of the nice Earth ships, like shown at the end, were like $500,000. The small project we're building was zero, like absolutely zero budget. All donated tools, donated materials, donated labor. So it depends how much time and energy you have. If you want to take your time, plan well, accumulate a bunch of free materials, use all the gift economy like Free Cycle, Craigslist Free, the Buy Nothing project. There are many resources in the city to get. People have so much stuff that they don't need, so there's a lot of resources. And to build in Washington, we are still looking at that. The small demonstration project we are building right now is 120 square feet, so basically it's a tool shed. So it's not legally a place we can live in. So I'm hoping that the Code Innovation Database will lead the way for us to walk through this and to document and get some permits and have them spread so that everybody can build ownership here. You want to say something about that?
I was just going to add, one of the things about airships is that they're completely off-grid, right? They're producing their own energy, they're capturing and using all the water that's needed, and so most code requirements require you to be hooked up to city water and power, and so that's something that some communities have been able to overcome some of those challenges. There's up in Bellingham, Dan Welch has got a completely off-grid water system, which is pretty unique, but Earthships would present a particular challenge in that area, I think, but not insurmountable, I would guess.
I hope so too, and actually I've met Dan Welch and he's been inspired by Earthships originally. But yeah, as far, I don't know very much, but from the little I know, one of the main hurdles would be to permit building with trash, like tires. And the septic system, usually in the city, they will not let you have your own septic. But if you're in the country, it should be easy to get a septic permit. And there are some people, I think in Yakima and Goldendale, who have built a house really almost an Earthship, not using tires, but pretty much all the other principles. And they were able to get variances and work with the permits to make it legal. So I hope that answered the question.
Great. Thank you. D, if one doesn't have any do-it-yourself skills, is it wise to build a shed first and then pay someone to finish it?
Sure. I don't know. I mean, I was lucky to have spent a lot of time remodeling my home, so I learned some skills that way. My recommendation is if you don't have any building skills, volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, work on a great project, volunteer for other people who are building smaller sheds, houses, learn framing, take a couple classes, get on the right side of your tools before you pick up a project. I know lots of people who have started tiny houses and stall out, they get burned out because it's a lot harder than they think it's going to be. Just picking up a sheet of plywood is hard. It weighs, a half-inch sheet of plywood weighs 60 pounds, I think. Maybe it's 3/4 inch. Whatever it is, it's heavy. So that would be my recommendation, is to volunteer before you start your project.
Thank you. Let's see. Florian, with Earthships, how do you strengthen the tire brick walls for earthquakes?
Well, actually, each tire is going to be pounded with dirt and about 200 or 300 pounds. And tires are flexible, they're rubber and metal. So in an earthquake, they will maybe wiggle, but they will not crack or fall or break. The plaster on it might crack, but it's purely cosmetic. I only know about one case of an earthship to an earthquake in Guatemala. It was only a 5 or 6 level earthquake, and it was totally fine. So I personally believe that an earthship would be much safer than most structures that we have right now. But I guess we need maybe more like engineering studies to prove that here in Seattle, where it's like very earthquake risky, that it would actually be safe. But I really believe it would be safe.
Thank you. Chris, what resources would you recommend for those looking to buy city land with options for multiple dwellings?
To buy land within a city,
Yeah.
I guess.
Within the city.
That's a good question. I mean, one of the designations is campsite or mobile home park that would kind of have the zoning in place that you could do something similar with a tiny home village. But most properties within the city are going to be zoned for either a single home or for multifamily, and but those are not expected to be a bunch of individual small dwellings, but more likely a larger building or whatever. So I think that you're going to have to. I mean, there's ways of looking at it as a co-housing community where there's a bunch of people who have a shared stake in a piece of property, and with a bunch of individual dwelling units on it. That's another way to approach it, is looking at it as a co-housing community. So more of a cooperative.
Great. As people are kind of winding down here, please remember to stop by our sponsors. We've got Deco over here, Energy Technologies, and Mighty Homes. I'm going to actually pass the mic out here. Does anybody have any questions that are?
Unless someone's already asked this, I'm kind of curious how, Dee, I'm guessing that the City of Olympia knows you exist, because we all do. How are you getting around the codes in Olympia with your tiny house? Because it's on the west side, it's pretty visible, you go to the co-op all the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not getting around it. While Rita was alive, I was able to take advantage of a dispensation. I can stay where I could live in my tiny house for an extended period of time because I was a caretaker. Now, since Rita died, I just haven't really checked back in with them. And then the way that I've kind of thought about it is that I travel a lot. So I don't sleep 30 nights in a row in my home. So the 30 nights that I am in my home, I'm recreating. I kind of recreationally do my taxes. There are lots of recreational things I do in there. And then, I travel. So I'm in Portland a lot with my company. I have my Vardo down there. My retirement home is in Portland, so I'm there part of the time and in Olympia part of the time. And I've had many conversations with the City of Olympia, and some of the biggest problems that the city has is with infrastructure.
So we're talking about, sewer connections. What do you do with gray water? What do you do with black water? Those are two really big issues for the city. And, I generate very little gray water because I bring it in a jug at a time. And then I have a composting toilet, so I don't have a sewer connection that's necessary. I shower someplace else. So I have a minimal amount of water in and water out. So I think they have fewer concerns about life and health safety, or fire and health safety, rather. So I don't know if that... Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, I just, I'm going to refer to this proposal from Orange Splat, or Eli Spivak. He's suggesting that you could have a proposal to create an allowance within the maintenance code, because there's a building code, and then there's even a separate code called the property maintenance code. So a proposal within the maintenance code that would allow for the habitation of homes on wheels if they meet certain performance standards, because once it's built and it's approved, then it only has to meet, is it serving the basic functions. But I think they would have to create an allowance for a home to stay more than 30 days and to be considered more than just an RV and camping for that to happen. The same thing with ground-bound structures, as you say. Again, if it's a small accessory structure, you're not supposed to live in it if it's considered an accessory structure, but you could have an amendment that would allow for habitation of these structures, again, if they meet those performance requirements of having, water and air.
Yeah, kind of like an outdoor bedroom.
Like an outdoor bedroom.
In Portland, you're allowed to have an outdoor bedroom where you have access to bathroom in the big house, kitchen in the big house, and maybe you have a hot plate in your bedroom. So
yes, Seattle and Olympia also have the accessory dwelling unit, but again, those have to be at least 120 square feet or more. Got a comment on that?
But they can't have a bathroom or a kitchen in it?
No, they're supposed to have a bathroom and a kitchen in it.
In the ADU?
In an ADU, yeah.
In an ADU, yeah, an accessory dwelling unit.
But a small accessory structure wouldn't have to have that, but then you wouldn't be able to live in it. They wouldn't acknowledge the fact that there's a bathroom in the main house that you could use. So that's part of the barrier that exists.
And you can't have more than one.
And you can't have more than one ADU, right?
There are a lot of good examples up in Vancouver, BC, of how they've they call it, I think it's a granny flat, or they have been able to adopt it into code. And a part of the reason they were able to adopt it into code, it was simply because it was already happening. So people were doing it anyway, and then the city caught up. And I think that's what we're seeing now. More and more people are doing urban infill in the way that they want to do it. The key, and I think that the thing that we all should be concerned about, is that it's done safely and that it's done mindfully. We're not the only people, I'm not the only person on the planet. And when I moved into the backyard, we all agreed if it didn't work for Rita, Hugh and Annie and their kids, the neighbors all around me, then it wouldn't work. And so far it's worked. And as a result, I've gotten to know my neighbors because I've helped dig French drains for the people that live 2 houses down. I've built chicken coops. I've helped unload groceries and lumber. I've been available to my neighbors because I want to be a good neighbor. And so this isn't an easy discussion for cities. And it shouldn't be an easy discussion for us, because I think we have a tendency to lock ourselves into what we want, what we need, and we don't think forward to, how is this going to evolve and how is this going to work for our neighbor? Like the apartments. Who's living in those apartments? Do you live in one? So do you feel like the people that live around you, the residences around you, do you feel like they resent you at all? See, it doesn't, there's this squawk about that. That's because you're nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing with tiny home villages. There's always that kind of NIMBYism, the resistance that comes from the neighbors before it's built. But then once they get through and they push their way through and get it done, there's been nothing but rave reviews from neighbors because people are so appreciative of having a place to live that they actually treat their neighbors well. One thing I want to say about the code innovations in general is that the intent of this project is not in any way to kind of try to get around the code or to try to avoid. I mean, those codes are there for very important reasons, to protect the life and safety of the people who live and work in those buildings. But there's more than one way to build a safe building. And when engineers and architects and everybody works so hard to find a new innovative way to build something that is safe, those pathways should be acknowledged, and there should be a flexibility for those types of innovations to be allowed and not just banned outright because it's unfamiliar. So I just want to make the point that those codes are important. We just need a little more flexibility, and they need to evolve more rapidly so that we don't run into all these barriers. A couple more questions out there.
Yeah. Well, part of the thing with the apartments is that builders are building, or I don't know what the rules are at the moment, but they could build these big buildings, and it's kind of a complex problem or challenge because, yeah, we need more affordable housing in the city. The apartments don't have parking. They're allowed to not have parking. But then we find out that 30% of the people in apartments have cars that they're now parking on the street. Only 22% have bicycles, but 30% have cars. So that creates some discomfort because when you drive up and down the streets in Seattle, one of the ways of controlling the speed of traffic is all this parking on both sides. So it's very tight to get through, so people naturally slow down, which is not a bad thing. Then there's a thing of developer-led infilling, where, yeah, they don't have to build garages so they can put more people in the apartment. That's lovely. The city hasn't been enforcing some of the codes in some of the areas. They've let 5-unit buildings go in single family, would have been single family, and it's shading yards that used to be used for kids to play or gardens. There just are some ways in these things kind of crisscross with each other, and so you get people that are worried about losing their garden and losing parking on the street. Those are kind of big.
And property values too, gentrification.
Yeah.
So for those who are listening remotely, the lady's comment was about apartments and how they don't have parking requirements, so it creates more parking on the streets that it causes impact on the rest of the neighboring community and other kind of impacts that come with that. So there's a way to do it right, and I think that's what is trying to get worked out in the policy realm of like how can these things happen, but in a way that has the least impact on the surrounding neighbors that are already there. Could you come up and use the microphone for the folks who are listening remotely? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Ferris, and I live in an urban village, one of those designated areas for pod apartments. And the net result of having 5 large holes dug in the ground and buildings built on 22nd Avenue Northeast has been a disaster in terms of garbage. People still have to dispose of their waste. There's beds, there's sofas, there's dumpsters flowing. It's like a war zone. So I wonder, Chris, how you can conflate developer-driven for-profit pod apartments with tiny homes.
Well, I'm not conflating.
Comparing.
I mean, we're looking at it in terms of the affordability and the desire to live in smaller community-oriented spaces. I can't speak to the concerns that you have. I mean, I think those are absolutely valid concerns.
120 square foot pod apartment on 27. That's not cheap.
I just have a quick question I want to pose to the room. I'm actually about to start building a tiny house this summer. I will start the next 6 weeks, but I'm still looking for a building site. So if anyone has any ideas for a kind of site to build my tiny house, I'd appreciate it. I'd also be interested in if somebody else wants to build a tiny house, maybe collaborating on a lot together, do something like that.
All right.
Commenters looking for a building site for their tiny home.
Awesome. That's what we're talking about.
So I want to know if there's a manual. I want to know if there's some conventional wisdom. Is there some conventional wisdom that everybody knows that you can get in a library? Which is, I live in, which is not this, colon. I live in North Seattle. I'm allowed to have an ADU. It's a cooperative household. The point of the ADU is to make more affordable housing. We're already making the most of it. 24 of us are in a 2,700 square foot house. If we build a tiny house, it's one more affordable space. But what is the order? Do I have somebody check the trees to make sure that there's not going to be any windfall? Do you dig the utility trench from the main house to the backyard first? I've already figured out that you have to have the public utilities mark where the drains are. I've already figured that one out, so you don't build on top of it. But is there a manual, experts, that tells you what is the order in which you do these things?
I know Portland has a Tiny Backyard Cottages manual. I think Seattle has one too that you can download or view on the city's website. It has all these detailed guidance on how to go about planning, designing, and permitting and building your ADU. So there are a lot of resources out there, and I think you can probably find it right on the city's website.
That's Portland.
Well,
No, there's
we've
one
got
here.
one here for here too.
There's one for Seattle as well.
So what is that website? They can look up
Okay. Yeah, so Kim's suggesting that you go to the cityofseattle.gov and look up client assistant memos, CAMs, for ADUs. There's a bunch of different.
Number 509,
Yeah, the tips. Yeah. Oh, CAM 116B, is that what it's called?
Tip
116B.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We found the answer.
All right. Well,
It takes a
so
village.
before everybody starts getting going, we've got a couple of, we've got a gentleman here, going back to the question about solar panels. We actually have, we are the Eco-Builders Guild, and we have a lot of people who can help you with solar panels. And we actually have a gentleman here who would, let him speak.
Hello, my name's Keith Hughes, and I'm the owner of a solar company, and I won't advertise it. That's not what I'm here for. There are some brochures over on the table where there's brochures of different Eco-Building Guild members. I am an Eco-Building Guild member. I love and I believe in green building concepts, including tiny houses. I've been involved in the solar industry since 1973. I've done one or two. If you need information about how to figure out how many solar panels you need and what other pieces of hardware you need to make something in your house work electrically from a solar panel, I am willing to provide that assistance to you free of charge. Pick up one of the brochures, my phone number is on it. If you want help, whether you're an individual or a design firm or whoever, if you want to sit down and talk with somebody with some experience about designing the solar portion of your tiny house or whatever, please give me a call. I love doing it. I love to work with you. And there are a lot of resources in that Eco-Building Guild magazine. There are a lot of members, and lots of us are here for the purpose of playing well together. Okay? So my name is Keith Hughes. So please, learn to take advantages of the resources that are available. Grab these little manuals, these little books that are around here that tell you about the members of this organization, and become a member, and let's all play nice together.
So we have
This is one from the simulcast.
Oh, we have a question from the simulcast remote viewers. One is a question about in Washington, are BLM and public lands fair game to stay on for periods of time with a trailer or other camping vehicle? The answer is that I think you can stay for 14 days and then you have to move to a different campsite. So that's a quick answer.
All right, great.
There's also a website called boondocking.com, I think.
There's a website called boondocking.com. You can check that out. If you have another question from the audience, come up to the front. Oh, yeah, sure.
I just wanted to offer, on our website, we have a book called Go House Go. For people who are interested in building a tiny house on wheels, it offers a lot of really great information about how to do that structurally, what your resources are for electrical systems, water systems, what your options are. And so I think it's been a really great resource for a lot of people. If you email me, I'm happy to send you a copy for free. Just email me, and it's a $20 download, but I'll send it to you for free. Because you guys have had to put up with me nearly falling asleep a couple times. That's the way I am.
One more question?
You got one more question, we're going to wrap it up.
Yep.
I had an answer to that last question about urban camping.
Yeah, well, public lands.
Public lands. I don't know about the campsites, but on public property or public roads, I think it's 72 hours after you get your vehicle marked or tagged by a sticker. I think it's an orange sticker. 72 hours in King County, I'm sure. Other counties, I'm not sure, but yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Okay. That's a question? Okay, make it quick. Where are you?
I just have a question about insuring tiny houses on wheels, if there's a way to do that.
That's a good one.
Yes, there is. There's insurance through Lloyd's of London, through, the only insurance company that I know of that has a really rock solid policy for tiny houses on wheels that are self-made. So not the ones that are manufactured, but the ones that you make yourself. And it's through Daryl Grenz, Grenz, down in Portland. He services the whole United States and Canada now. So it's a fairly new policy. I have it on both of my houses, and I feel so much better about it. And all it is it offers catastrophic loss, if for some reason my house would burn up in a forest fire, or liability. So if my house lights on fire and then burns the neighbor's house down, I've got some coverage for that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. We just invite you to have conversations with each other, make connections today. Oh yeah, that's right. There's a work party. I don't know how to. So Lehi is having a work party this Sunday. If you are looking to get your hands dirty and work on some tiny houses and work with people who are building tiny houses, it is a work party on the Othello Tiny House Village on MLK Junior Way. So look that up on the Lehi website, Low Income Housing Institute. All right, that's it. Thank you so much.